Now, this next story comes with a strong word of caution. The details are gruesome. You won't want young children to watch.
He had a good reputation. I mean, people liked him. And they actually believed that he was offering a service that poor women could not afford anyplace else. So how it went so wrong is anybody's guess.
From everything I've heard, before this, he was a well-respected physician in West Philadelphia. He was successful. This was not a back alley operation. He was on one of the most prominent highways through that portion of the city. And he provided a service that a lot of people used.
There was a whole system failure, and people have died. People have died who should not have died, and we've allowed a man to continue to butcher babies, butcher women, and nobody did a damn thing about it.
Check 1, 2, check 1, 2.
Good morning. This informational hearing will now come to order. I thank all of you for coming. I'm Senator Pat Vance, the Majority Chairman of the Senate Public Health and Welfare Committee. Today's is an informational hearing, and it will provide a good opportunity to gather more details about the conditions that existed inside the Gosnell Women's Medical Society clinic and the action taken by those involved.
On February the 18th of 2010, as a result of an ongoing investigation, we were executing a search warrant at the office of Dr. Kermit Gosnell, which is located in 38th and Lancaster Avenue, the neighborhood of Philadelphia known as Mantua.
Well, it's no surprise Philadelphia has a drug problem, trafficking, not just in street drugs, but there's always been a problem with trafficking in pharmaceuticals, controlled narcotic substances. And initially, this investigation, from what the federal grand jury report has said, began as an investigation of somebody who was putting out prescription drugs, oxycodone, other drugs, into the West Philadelphia community.
What they discovered, it's almost out of one of the worst movies or horror novels that you could imagine. It was blood-stained walls, blood-stained beds, and unclean sheets. They found jar after jar after jar filled with fetal remains, and specifically severed feet in jars. They found medical waste bags just strewn everywhere. What they learned was that he was running an abortion clinic, for the most part, a late-term abortion clinic.
I mean, there have been plenty of horrors that have been uncovered in Philadelphia and elsewhere, but I think this case itself is almost unprecedented.
I had started hanging around with like the wrong crowd around that time period, and I had got raped and I got pregnant. And then someone told me about this clinic at 3001 Extra Avenue.
When I found out I was pregnant, I did not even know what like morning sickness was. I knew who I was pregnant by, and he was gone. He was in town and out of town. He was gone back to Jamaica. And it threw me for a loop. So I felt like, what do I do, you know? And here's my career. I'm not ready for this, so what do I do? That's how I felt, like I was at a loss.
It was always packed, coming and going. I think everybody knew abortions were going on. You couldn't help it because every Saturday morning, the priests and the anti-abortionists were out front praying the rosary.
He called the police on me, and I was moved from here to across there, and I stood across there with a bullhorn telling people what their baby looked like at this time, and sending them to the birthright and different other places that could give them help. And if I could just save one a day, that was good for me.
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a fish tank in the waiting area. And then you had a receptionist that just like, all she wanted was your money immediately.
I've seen people walking in and out all the time. I mean, and walking out and, you know, and half of the girls falling on the ground, you know, way, you know, all drugged up, you know, and after getting procedures done. And it's just, you see some weird stuff going on in there, but I didn't know he was what he was doing, you know, with the killings and all.
I came in and they finally called my name. And I went upstairs. And I remember just walking through and looking, and I seen some women that looked half dead in these bloody recliner chairs. There was blood all over the floor. And I just kept going.
Dr. Gosnell had a process that he referred to as snipping. Women would come, specific medicines would be given that would induce labor.
I didn't see him until I was hooked up with IVs, and when they put the heart monitor around me, that's when I decided I can't do this.
They would then take scissors and place them at the base of the skull and snip or sever the spinal cord of those children that were born alive.
There was one baby that when it was born, one of the workers was playing with it for several minutes before the worker did exactly what Dr. Gosnell did, snipped the back of the neck. And when we use the word snip, it is a scissors taking a bony part of a vertebrae and cutting it. This is a very, very painful thing. And some of these babies did not die immediately. And they described their bodies twitching and lifeless.
I can't do it. And he's like, oh, stop being a little baby. And he's pounding on my leg. Stop being a little baby, stop being a little baby. And now I'm outnumbered because all these women come in and I'm like tied to the bed. And next thing I know, I was out of it.
It went so like fast and so like that's away. So when I got pregnant again, I went to the clinic and I asked them, I said, is it okay that I get, you know, another abortion? Fine, fine. They even like had this woman sit down with me and she told me that women in Brazil have at least 21 abortions. And she was like, and they're still able to conceive, and you know, and that was it for me. That was where I basically said, you know what, this has to be okay. It was the norm for me after she had coached me into believing that that was the norm. I would say the next 14 years, like within that time, I had 8 abortions. 8. And I look at it, I look back at it, and it's like, you know, God, what was I thinking?
I woke up and I was sitting next to another girl. And at first when I woke up, I thought I was like, I didn't know where I was. I just knew I was really groggy, and I knew I wasn't pregnant anymore. And I was crying, and I kept saying, I want my baby, I want my baby. And they just were ignoring me.
But they made it seem like it was so okay. It was just so okay to just go in there and get it done, as long as you had the money.
I don't know specifically how much he was charging. That goes into some detail in the grand jury report. But certainly the prosecution in Philadelphia, the prosecutors contend that it made him a millionaire.
The adult victim, prosecutors say, was 41-year-old Karnamaya Monger, who died in 2009 after receiving an overdose of anesthesia. The nearly 300-page investigative report says paramedics who arrived at the clinic found her lifeless and said Gosnell was just standing there, not doing anything.
In this woman's death, one of his office workers began the anesthesia process. Not a nurse, not a professional anesthesiologist, but just an employee of the clinic who had begun working with the doctor and sort of got on-the-job training. The problem was that, you know, when you have, especially with anesthesia, when you have somebody who has been given too much, you don't have a very big margin of error to try to save someone's life.
The grand jury, in addition to reporting their findings of the horrific and barbaric treatment of women and young girls, you know, they were very upset and angered by what they thought was a disparate treatment, that the treatment of these patients was, in their mind, only allowed due to the fact that the supermajority of the patients were poor, that they were minorities, that they were brown and black women.
%70 of all abortion facilities are located in the black and minority communities around this country.
Abortion is the #1 killer of African Americans, killing more black people than all other deaths combined.
Dr. Gosnell even had a separate room in his clinic for the young white women that would come, that was slightly less squalid than the rest of the clinic. When asked by his staff why this was, he said, well, that's the way of the world. It would be more likely for those women to report what had happened and what they saw at the clinic.
Everything that was ever gained during the civil rights movement means nothing to a dead black child.
We are here in defense of the defenseless, of those who cannot speak out for themselves.
There is an effect of abortion on our community. That effect has an impact on our demography. It has an impact on our survival. It has an impact on the health of our community and certainly on the health of our families.
I think there are many of us who have forgotten what the dream was all about.
Yeah.
Civil rights are still being violated.
Yes, yes.
Even today, how many black people continue to look the other way while black babies are being slaughtered by abortionists? How can we continue to smile, slapping each other on the back, proud of our accomplishments, when abortion facilities are purposefully placed in inner cities and minority neighborhoods to crush the bodies of innocent black children? Make no mistake, abortion is a civil rights issue.
How was it that this clinic was allowed to operate in this condition? And how was it that this doctor was allowed to practice medicine?
The state did discipline health department officials after the raid on the Gosnell clinic and after the grand jury report came out because plainly someone wasn't doing their job.
The Department of Health, who regulates the facilities, had the authority to revoke the facility approval for this clinic. Quite simply, they had the authority to shut it down.
The grand jury found and reported that the last time representatives of the State Department of Health had actually gone on site to view physically the Women's Medical Society was in 1993. How is it that we have more oversight in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania of women's hair salons and nail salons than we do over abortion clinics?
Had anybody gone over to the clinic, they would have seen exactly what they saw in 2010, that this place was not being operated to the minimum medical standards required.
Somebody had to go in and see unhealthy conditions in that building in the 90s and the early 2000s. Why the heck didn't somebody say, I'm gonna go to the cops? Why the heck didn't somebody say, I'm gonna take this to the DA's office or the city inspector's office? Why did they just let it fester and fester and fester? We can blame the state, and I'm blaming the state, but why the heck didn't somebody there on the ground say, I'm gonna take an initiative and make sure that these people are taken care of properly and make sure this outfit stops now?
Like, knowledge is absolute power. I was 21 years old. I cannot sit here and say that part of it wasn't my fault. It was. But I feel like I was really, led to believe that it was okay every time I came in there. It was okay. It was okay to just treat it as a form of contraception. After, once I started getting older, and I really thought I found the right person, and we just could not conceive. And I went to the doctor, and I found out that I was my body was so ravaged from abortions. There are people out there who are monsters that could actually do this to you and then walk away at the end of the day and feel like it's okay. It's all about money. It's all about greed. He wasn't helping anybody.
I can't have babies. As a result, I'm married. I have a daughter that wants a brother or sister, and I can't give her that. I want a child. I can't have that. Every year that goes past, I think of my baby that I would have had.